Hello and welcome to our direct talk. On today's session, Dr. Kibrom, the Chief Executive Director of Ayder Comprehensive Specialized Hospital, will be joining us. Dr. Kibrom, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, the Ethiopian and Eritrean governments continue to target civilians and civilian installations across Tigray using jets, drones, heavy artillery almost on a daily basis. The latest horrific incident would be the AdiDaeroMassacre committed by the Eritrean Air Force on September 27, 2022. Shall we first start with your reflections on these incidents?
What happened in AdiDaero by the Ethiopian and Eritrean regimes, the bombardment of the town of AdiDaero was tragic. In fact, it was a very tragic incident. These people, the people of AdiDaero or people of Tigray, are already suffering due to the siege, ongoing siege, starvation, lack of medicine, and so on. So already these people were suffering. They were slowly dying. So on top of this problem, they have, committed to bombard the whole town of AdiDaero. So this reminds us in history by this Spanish dictator Francisco Franco, who have invited the Nazi Germany to bombard his own town, Guernica, which was a win-win for both Franco and Hitler. Franco, by inviting these fascist regimes, he thought he would quash the civil war, and Hitler wanted to demonstrate how the carpet bombing works. And that's exactly what happened in AdiDaero, or what's happening in Tigray now. Ethiopian government inviting other foreign troops to bombard Tigray and towns in Tigray, cities in Tigray. This is, one of the crimes that should be remembered in history. As now we remember Guernica is a war crime, this AdiDaero bombardment is also another war crime in the making.
So, do you believe these deliberate attacks on civilians constitute to a terrorism?
Yeah, by definition, terrorism is, the unlawful use of power, use of force to coerce civilians, governments, institutions to further one's political will. So, what is being done by these two governments and their allies is to force or to further their own political will against the people of Tigray, government of Tigray. So, this is an act of terrorism committed by governments. So, if we call other organizations terrorists based on the actions they do against civilians, civilian population, or government installations, this is the same. The definition works for everyone. So the international community, the world by itself should call it terrorism, should call it by its name.
So how has the war and the subsequent siege of Tigray affected Tigray's health system? Specifically, how has the near total collapse of Tigray's health system affected our ability to cope with emergencies?
The war, which is now going to its third year, has affected the health system delivery in Tigray. To start with, in the first 8 months of the war, the health sector was primarily targeted. Health centers, hospitals, clinics were destroyed, they were dismantled, and they were looted. So this left us with more than 80% of the health facilities in Tigray being non-functional. So the people, the entire population was, dependent on the remaining few hospitals and health centers. So to this, what is added now is the siege. So whatever remaining hospitals and health centers we have, they cannot run their daily activities due to the lack of medicine, supplies, and other equipment. So this has resulted in the total collapse and catastrophe of the health system. And this is, counting the number of deaths in almost every day. It is rising. The starvation, management of chronic diseases, emergency illnesses. It means some of the diseases we can't cure them totally, and to be diagnosed by this disease means it's a certain death. So it has affected the health system of Tigray significantly.
What are different health centers, including your hospital, Ayder Comprehensive Specialized Referral Hospital, treating the casualties of these aerial attacks? And in what ways would you say that the shortage of medicines and basic medical supplies has, exacerbated the impacts of the incidents of the aerial attacks?
Yeah, the siege and the absence of these needed materials, supplies, equipment, they have resulted in increasing the casualties. For example, if there is an aerial bombardment, be it drone or jet, then what people are interested in the number of deaths which happen immediately on those the primary targets. But what we have to see is the subsequent deaths. Unless we treat these patients, unless we have the right medications and we do the right procedures, these patients are going to die anyways. Some of them the next day, some of them after some few weeks. So if we had the equipment, if we had the supplies and drugs, then we could have saved some of these victims of the aerial bombardment and drone attacks. But what happens is they come to our hospital or to other available health centers, but the answer is the same. We don't have the right medicine, we don't have the right equipment, so we don't do the right procedures. So we have to improvise, we have to do what is not recommended by the books or what is obsolete now in the modern medicine. We were obliged to use gloves, to reuse them, to wash them. We have to use expired drugs to treat these patients. Some of the effects will be seen in the future, but the others we are witnessing the deaths of these casualties immediately. So the siege plus the war has significantly devastated the health system, plus it is contributing its own, it's taking its own toll on the number of deaths. So we don't have to see the primarily deaths on the site. We have to count everyone. But everyone is interested whenever there is an attack, whenever, for example, in AdiDaeroMassacre area bombardment, people were interested on the number of deaths the same day. Nobody asked us how many died the next day, on the third, or after a week. So this is very tragic. The number of deaths is going up because of preventable causes of death.
What are some of the ways in which the international community has failed the people of Tigray?
Now, the international community has completely failed us. They have failed Tigray. This is a war, but war has its own formula. It shouldn't target civilians, it shouldn't target the civilian institutions, it has to protect the population. War should be done on the fronts between the two belligerent groups, not between certain countries, government versus innocent people. But what's going on in Tigray is exactly that. So whenever there is war on the fronts, then who pays the dividend is the people of Tigray, the population, the innocent civilians in towns and villages. Once the war started, we were besieged for more than 16 months now. Whatever aid and drugs were trickling into Tigray has now completely stopped after the recommencement of the war in August 24. Since then, we haven't received anything. So patients are dying, diabetic patients are dying because of lack of insulin. Chronic renal failure patients are dying because of lack of dialysis. So the international community should have intervened, should have called for the passage of unfettered access for humanitarian access, be it food items or drugs and supplies. But what we are hearing from them is that they are concerned, they are deeply concerned, but their concern or deep concern doesn't save the life of the diabetic patient or the renal patient or the trauma aerial bombardment patient. What we expect from them is, a concrete action. They have to intervene. They have to, call for the government of Ethiopia to allow or to have access for the drugs, supplies, and food items to pass to Tigray for the innocent civilians.
All right. So what should the international community do to compel the Ethiopian and Eritrean regimes to comply with the international humanitarian and human rights law and desist from deliberately targeting civilians?
Yeah, we are not going to prescribe them what they are going to do because they know it and they are doing it in other countries. What did they do when the people of Ukraine were attacked? What did they do when Ukraine was invaded by foreign troops? What do they do in other countries, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Libya, in many other countries where they thought there was violations of civil rights, violations of human rights? starvation or killing by dictator governments. They have already written documents. They have the procedures to follow. But one thing that the world is not following is not keeping its word. They are not calling for the Ethiopian Eritrean government to stop the war, to stop the killing of innocent civilians, and they should say never again now, including for the people of Tigray, including for the people of Africa. We are the same people, and their word, it should be applicable to everyone living in every corner of the world. So they have lots of battery of sanctions when they are interested, but when they think it is unimportant, then they give us a blind eye and a deaf ear for our suffering. So they should call for the unfettered access of humanitarian access. If this is not followed, then there are sanctions to be put on the governments. They can call to stop air bombardment, but if they don't follow it, then they can call for no-fly zone in Tigray, where civilians are being targeted. So in my view, what the international community is doing is just they are giving us a deaf ear. They are not being concerned as they say. It is just to say or that not to be condemned entirely. They just put words, we call this a crocodile tear. It's not helping us a lot.
Dr. Kibrom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, that ends today's session of our Direct Talk. Thank you for tuning in.